The parliamentary inquiry examining the Voice to Parliament and its constitution amendment released its findings on Friday. It recommended the wording of the Voice go ahead without change, meaning the reference to executive government will remain. The advice, however, was not unanimous, with Liberal members of the committee issuing a dissenting report. One of those Liberal members joins me now, and he was the Deputy Chair of the committee, the member for Menzies, Keith Wolohan. Keith, thanks for your time. How do you reflect on the committee's deliberations now? Are you disappointed that there wasn't some sort of compromise?
I think my first disappointment, Kieran, was that we didn't have a constitutional convention. That this is a really serious amendment to our founding democratic document. And we've had constitutional conventions in the past. So we had 5 public hearing days. Only 2 of those covered legal issues. So my first disappointment is that we should have had more time and a convention. I was disappointed that the committee didn't look at modifying or removing some of the risk. And there were plenty of options put before the committee where that could be done in a way that was consistent with the intent of the proposal. But there's still a small window for the government and the parliament to consider doing that.
Yeah, there is indeed. I did watch a fair bit of the hearing, including your questioning of one of the key figures in all of this, Noel Pearson, and about that central issue of the reference to executive government and the potential risks associated with that, because it incorporates basically all of the public service as well. He did not seem open at all to any compromise. Do you see that as one of the challenges here, that it's fine for government or junior figures in the government to maybe want to compromise, but if someone like Noel Pearson won't have it, then are they restricted here?
Well, that's right. But let's remember one thing. Noel Pearson is a distinguished Australian who's had a key role in this, but he doesn't own it. It's not his. The Constitution belongs to every Australian. And the Parliament has a duty to Australians to make sure that we put the best possible words before them and we reduce risk wherever we can. So the risk that we see is in part 2, the voice to the executive. No one is saying that there isn't a role for the voice to the executive, but does it have to be in the Constitution? You could legislate a voice to the executive, or if you were to leave it in the wording, you could further minimise the risk with some simple amendments to Part 3. I'm really quite baffled as to why that's not occurring. And if there's no risk in Part 2, well then the question is, why does it remain? No one can answer that question.
When you hear from the likes of Anne Toomey, other eminent lawyers, George Williams from the University of New South Wales, they're all quite sanguine though, aren't they, about the wording? I guess that's the counterpoint to the likes of Greg Craven and Father Frank Brennan on the one side, saying there are issues there. But then you've got others like Anne Toomey, Kenneth Hayne, former High Court judge, Robert French, former High Court Chief Justice. They're all relaxed with it.
Well, they have a view on risk where they say that the risk exists, but they think it's low. But then on the other side, you've got other former federal court judges, other academics, a former High Court judge and Justice Callanan, and many others who say the risk is higher. And we can't deal with our Constitution like we're comparing baseball cards. It's more important than that. So if we can all agree that the risk exists and there's proposals that can minimise that risk, and there's no good reason why you wouldn't do it, I really don't see why the government and the parliament shouldn't take that chance to make this as safe as possible. Because right now, our view, and it's in the dissenting report, is that this current drafting contains serious constitutional risk.
Do you think the government and those advocating a yes vote, key figures, as we said, Noel Pearson and others, have missed an opportunity if they don't change this? Because an argument has been made, again, Father Frank is one of those that's made it on this program, that the government would win more moderate Liberals like, say, Andrew Bragg and others who want to support it, that sort of ilk, if they make this change.
I don't want to speak on behalf of what my colleagues might do in the parliament. That's a decision for each of them, those that are not shadow ministers, and they're free to do what they wish. But I would say, look at the Australian public. There will be Australians, and I've heard from them, I've spoken to them, who want to vote yes, but they're concerned about risk. Now, if we wake up the day after this referendum and it just fails or it just passes, that's not a unifying moment. And I think many will look back on this window now and say, what if we actually compromised on that risk? What if we reduced it? Would we have a different result here today?
Would you vote yes if there was a change?
I'm more concerned about the principle of equality of citizenship. I think the changes that are being proposed don't address that. But that said, I do understand that reconciliation is an important objective in itself. This is the one that is on offer by a voice. Whilst I might be concerned about that, I know that many Australians who value equality of citizenship would still nonetheless support something if the risk could be reduced. So there's a lot to gain if the government and if the parliament was to look at reducing the risk in the wording.
And what about you personally?
No, the wording as drafted, I would vote no on the current wording.
But if there was a compromise?
It depends what it is, Kieran. It depends what it is. I would want to see the removal of executive government to start with. But even then, I would still have concerns about the principle of equality of citizenship being offended. But I could sleep well at night knowing that the proposal being put forward is much safer, and that's important to me.
Deputy Chair of the Voice Committee, Member for Menzies, Keith Wolahan, thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Kieran.